Education is the heart and soul of the Samvia brand as we stand before you for the love of education.
Whether it's through live education or maybe through social media, we're always trying to make a personal connection with you, the learner.
Our contributions in education will be our legacy in this age.
At Samvia, our smile is our logo, and our personality is our business card. And how you feel when you walk away after an educational experience is our trademark.
The heart of Samvia is education. Join our journey, my friends, and we will change your life behind the chair.
Welcome to Wednesday, or Wellness Wednesday. I guess it's been a minute since we've had a Wellness Wednesday, so please forgive me for botching the title. But we're so happy to have you all here. Please, in the comments, just pop in where you're watching from so we know who is here in the audience with us today. And before we get rolling, just a couple quick touch bases. If you are someone that loves the Samvia tools, we do have an awesome affiliate program. It's really simple to sign up. You can head to samvia.com for more information on how to sign up. But when time someone uses your affiliate code, you earn 20% commission, plus they get 10% additional off their purchase. Even if that item's on sale, they get an additional 10% off. So really great opportunity. And if you are looking for some live hands-on education, you can bring the Samvia art team into your salon. You can head to samvia.com/education for more information on that. So tonight, we get to have a great conversation. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about myself, and we're going to talk about an event we're doing together, but it's all about the alchemy of communication. And tonight we have the great pleasure of bringing on someone who is a very dear friend of mine, who I've worked in the industry with for a very long time, had really deep connections with, and she has such an inspiring story. We actually have very parallel paths because she started as a hairdresser, became a salon owner, got into the self-awareness and self-help journey, and now is a coach to so many people on so many beautiful levels in leadership and communication. So please, and she's also an author. Sorry, I almost forgot that. And her book is fantastic. We'll talk about that. But please, in the chats, welcome my good friend, coach, salon owner, Drea Hemmer.
Andrew, thank you so much for having me and that welcome. That was pretty powerful. So I just appreciate you and your friendship and everything you do in the industry and outside of it. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure too. And we've got her from Riverview. Please just pop into the chat so Drea and I know who's in the chat with us. We've got the team behind the scenes that can answer questions for you too. But as we go through, please pop your questions into the chat, and Drea, I will make sure we do our best to answer them. So tonight's all about communication. And Drea, just the thing that I think I'd love to hear from you is why this has become such a big part of your study, your practice, and your coaching. Why is communication so important?
I think something that has become more clear to me throughout the years, being in the industry and being a leader, is how important relationships are to be successful. I believe in our industry and most likely in any industry and just in life. And when you think about what creates a healthy relationship with yourself and with others is the way you use your words and how you use them and the energy that words carry, and that words are what connect us to others. And I think that was, as that got clearer, I started to have more of an understanding of how important it is to really understand that it's a skill set to become a great communicator. We're not just born that way. And a lot of what happens when we are communicating is never taught to us. And so as I started to get more curious around why some interactions felt really good and why some interactions felt not so good, things started to show up where I realized that there was a study around this and that there was more information that I could learn to start to have better relationships with myself and with others. So it's been a journey, and I think it will always be a journey. I think communication is something that we have a lot of possibly unhealthy habits, maybe aware or unaware of, and we can always practice to become better. So I have this calling to just continue to find out what's happening when we are having these exchange of verbal and nonverbal cues, and how can we be more aware of what's actually working for us and is partnering with our intentions. And so there's just so much to impact, I guess, also in that question, but I'm passionate about having healthy relationships with myself and with others, and it comes down to the way we communicate.
Yeah. And I love what you just said there, because I think sometimes when we talk about communication, we think about it just between two people, right? And what you just said there is also the communication with self.
Yeah.
You know, because how we communicate with ourself is going to have such an effect on us as well. So Drea and I actually have an event in Boise coming up in a few weeks, and we're marrying together the alchemy, that's why we called it Alchemy of Communication, of both the more esoteric aspects of our life, because both Dre and I have studied more esoteric teachings, but also we're super into the neuroscience of it. So what in your experience has helped you from maybe what people tend to refer to as the more esoteric aspects of communication?
Yeah, I love that question and that way that you just brought this in, because that was something that I think I also was a little bit afraid of, is learning more about the neuroscience. Like you said earlier, I started out in the industry as a hairdresser, and coming into the industry, my personal story is, I didn't think I was textbook smart. I didn't know if I could pick up on some of those things that were traditionally in some schools. And so I almost shied away, almost started at my own belief system that I wasn't smart enough to learn this kind of stuff. And I have a really great coach, Lynn Christian, and she really coached me into being more open to understanding more neuroscience around what happens when we're exchanging words, what's happening in the mind and body. And that was a breakthrough moment for me, because when I started to understand the basic way the mind worked, I began to start to think about the mind is universal. So if I can understand what words are doing and how they're impacting the mind and the body, and knowing it's universal, so this could be related to anyone on planet Earth, then there could be something significant here. And so that really piqued my interest to want to know that I know I'm feeling things, and I know that there's a way to possibly have more of a relationship with our feelings around the relationships we're in with ourselves and others, but to actually have some facts or some understanding on a scientific level, this really started to open up some new insight for me on how I could not only explain it to possibly myself, but how I could start to help others with this information that I had. People that maybe had more of a reasoning way of thinking and needed some of those facts around how our words are impacting the different regions in our mind, or how they're impacting our nervous system. And science now has research to back that up. And I think that, when I think about the esoteric part, I did a lot of training with Don Miguel Ruiz, and he wrote the book 4 Agreements. And one of the agreements is to be impeccable with your word. And even in that sense, when you read a book like that, you can start to have some sort of your own awareness around words do have an energy behind them. Like there is so much that goes into our self-talk and the way we talk to others. And that had more of just kind of that, like, almost like inner understanding. Like, I don't know if you can really explain sometimes what you're experiencing when you're kind of more in that like feeling way, or feeling your way through making sense of something, where this neuroscience really helped me have more of that concrete understanding on how I could actually talk more about communication and how words really impact, again, ourselves and others.
Yeah. And I'm so with you. I think that anytime that we can see these very complex subjects from multiple different angles. So like you said, if you haven't read the 4 Agreements out there, you got to go get that book tonight.
Yes.
Probably one of the most impactful books you could ever read. So if we start to understand things from what maybe a lot of people would call a more spiritual aspect or a more self-help aspect. That's one way to see and look at things. But as you said, as we start to actually put people into MRIs and test how they react with certain types of communication, certain types of words, certain types of sounds, and we can actually see from a neuroscience standpoint that this isn't just airy fairy wishy-washy stuff that you learn at meditation camp.
Yeah.
This is actually real. It adds a whole new perspective to it. And so, for those of you that are watching, maybe that's something to add to your own repertoire is, if you are someone that's very scientific and very fact-based, maybe it would be fun to explore some of these things from a more esoteric or spiritual or energetic aspect to see what's available to you. And to the other people that tend to stay in that more esoteric, spiritual, energetic space, maybe it'd be fun to explore, like, what does neuroscience, what do the scientists say about this information? And it can add so much richness to a conversation like this.
Absolutely. And I think if you, as a hairstylist and a hairdresser, and we know that we get in those types of interactions between a guest and ourselves, a client and ourselves, and there's an exchange of words that one moment we felt really good with this person. And then within just some words being exchanged, we feel something totally different. And we start to possibly shut down, or we're not as creative around this person. Things start to feel more threatening. And really all that's happened in that moment of something feeling good to feeling not so good, were an exchange of words. And that alone is something that I would imagine would pique most people that are watching this interest. Like, we have more control around how we interact and how we navigate through conversations that feel good and quickly turn to not feeling so good than we possibly may know. And that's a lot of why I love that you're encouraging people to read these two different ways of learning around language and how it affects the mind and the body and the heart. And it really can impact your life and your business, because we don't get taught this type of information, throughout our lives, yet we've communicated throughout our whole entire lives. And that's why I'm so passionate, Andrew, about our workshop that's coming up. Is we've spent so much time to really kind of dissect this and have a relationship with it and experiment with these different types of information that can help you become a more skillful communicator, to have healthier relationships that, when we think about our business, can change your entire business by just knowing how to communicate better.
Yeah. And the thing is if we don't take the time to go through the process to actually look at these things, because the mind wants to work from pattern and habit. We know this through, basic neuroscience of, okay, we've got the prefrontal cortex, which is like the conscious thinking mind. And then we have kind of everything else, which is the more subconscious, unconscious part of the mind. Most of the day, and most neuroscience reports that you will read about this will agree on this, 95% of our day, 95% is us operating from all of this stuff back here, which is subconscious, unconscious. That is patterns, it's previous experiences, it's habits. That's what we're mainly operating from throughout the day. And it's for a good reason. We're trying to protect ourselves. And it takes very little energy for the body to operate from that back portion of the mind. This little piece up front, the prefrontal cortex, which is the more conscious, contemplative, thinking part of the mind, the part that we can engage to do exactly what Drea said, which is we can do things differently. It takes a lot of energy, and it only really wants to turn on when it has to. Like, it really only wants to come in and do things when it has to, because it takes so much energy. So to actually change the way that we communicate, to change our relationships, to change how we speak to ourselves, we have to become conscious of what our current patterns and habits are. That has to be the first step. Because if we're not aware of the patterns and the habits that we have in the way that we communicate with the world, we kind of can't do anything about it. And, to your point, Drea, the salon, because I know that a lot of people that are watching right now are from the salon world, the salon's a great place to start to observe this. What types of things do you say? How do you say them? And how does people respond to those things? Are you getting the actual response that you want from your conversations? And if you're not, this is a great opportunity to start saying, well, how come? Like, what words am I choosing? What's the pace what's the energy in my language?
Yeah, I love that, Andrew. And there's so much here that I think is important. You know, one of my greatest teachers, and I had my certification through conversational intelligence, which was a very intensive program. And Judith Glazer, she always said, words change your world. And it's pretty interesting when you think about just even changing one word. If you're asking questions, and if you just changed your question asking, most people start with like, why did you do that? Or why would you want that? To what or how? It's incredible what it starts to unlock, and that people start to feel a softer, more safe way of exchanging ideas with you. So you can, change something from why to as simple as like, how come this would be important to you? Tell me a little bit more about that. And you'll see walls come down, and you'll start to see a different energy exchange between the two of you. And it's just by changing one word. Words really change your world. And it takes your awareness, like what you were just saying, Andrew. And I think this is why I'm so grateful when I think back on my journey of really getting into this work, is it started more on that esoteric, the more spiritual side. I was working at becoming more mindful. And I wanted to have more awareness in my day. So I wasn't running on autopilot. I wanted to start to process information from my top down. So things coming into my prefrontal versus my reactive emotional centers, the amygdala or our primitive minds. I wanted to process things in a more gentle way. And so I knew I needed to massage that area of my mind. And we do that through mindfulness practice. So my journey started there, which is such a blessing. I had zero awareness. I feel like I was running around, in the salon and through life, just almost like a wrecking ball. I was leaving messes and not really knowing what I was leaving behind. And I knew that didn't feel like the life I wanted. I knew there was something I was really craving that could be different. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I started to get into the work again, like with Don Miguel and Don Jose Ruiz, which they speak so much around mindfulness and becoming self-aware. And I knew I needed to start there so that I could hopefully see the things I was unable to see without my awareness on my own, and then build the courage to go to different people I trusted to find out, how am I in a conversation? What's the experience that they have when they're interacting with me? And also having oh my gosh, I guess, again, courage to be able to hear what it was that they were going to say, because I knew I needed to change. Because like you just said earlier, the impact I was hoping for, the intention was always good, but the impact, it always felt a little bit lower. It didn't feel like it was in line with with the intention I had in different relationships that I wanted to have become stronger. And that was with a lot of my guest experiences. When things went wrong in a guest experience, I felt like I reacted more than I responded in those ways. I didn't know how to really stay in them. I wanted to run. I wanted to flee. My amygdala and emotional centers and nervous system was taking over. And so it is so important as you start to think about how you want to make changes in the way that you show up and communicate with others. You have to become aware. And you can do that through, journaling. Journaling is a great way to capture the way that you speak in your journal are going to be the same patterns, most likely, of how you speak to others. And so you can capture filler words. You can capture, are you positive in the energy you have behind your words? Or is it a little bit more negative if you just read your journal back to you and just had more of a, non-judgment moment with it to see, where were you coming from in that moment? Because that could also be a way to capture a pattern. But awareness is the key to any beneficial change in your life. You have to become aware. And we do that through mindfulness practice.
Yeah. There was something that you said there too that I think is so key, which is the intention sometimes is not what actually is coming through. Mm-hmm. And this is the awareness part, because this came up with a coaching client today, just a few hours ago. So this is kind of perfect timing. And I don't think that she would mind me sharing this story, because I can share it in a way that it doesn't, give any reflection of who this person is. In their conversations with people within the salon, they weren't getting necessarily the response that they wanted. And so we took a specific example, and it was an example with a business partner. And she told me about, this is what I said, this is how I said it, and this was the result of it. I said, okay, so what specifically did you say? Like, repeat it back to me. Tell me exactly what you said. And they said that, I blah, 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 I want this and I want that, and I want this to be this certain way, and I want us to do this. And I said, okay, so I'm going to repeat this back to you, but I'm just going to change a couple words and you tell me the difference. So I repeated back to her what she had said, which was I this, I that, I this. And I said, what does it sound like if I say what's important to us and what I would love for us to have? And can we find this together? And she was like, here's the silly thing, Andrew. That's what it sounds like in my head.
Wow.
It's just not what I said. And it was a great moment for her, because that was the moment of awareness that she was like, oh my gosh, that's what I intended.
Yes.
Like, that's what my heart wanted. I want my partner to feel like it's not me talking at her, it's me talking together.
Yes.
But the words that she chose, and not intentionally even, this was just, again, pattern and habit. And that can lead to our sense of compassion with each other, is like, hey, I'm just doing what I know how to do so far. But then we step into awareness and we go, oh, I mean to be in a cooperation, but everything I said was I, me. Okay. And again, like you said, one simple word shift can be the difference between the person on the other side of the conversation feeling like they're part of the conversation and they're being invited in, or feeling like, wow, well, isn't it just all about you today?
Yeah. I love that you brought that in, because it is, again, it's the power of our language and just changing one word. And there's so many of us that, and I'm going to say, I'm going to just weigh on the side of most of us. We have the purest intentions, but where we possibly fail is checking in on our impact. So there's a big difference there. Like, we can walk around and say, I had the best intentions, or I intend for this. But if we're not checking into seeing how things are actually landing for others, how people are experiencing us, we could be not doing, anything close to what we intended to do. And so having a coach, I think, is so important, because you can do exactly what you were able to do with her, is just repeat back and then change the words so she gets to hear something that really did partner with the intentions that she had. And this is so cool, because I think we could share this here. I think this is, something that I can bring in really useful for a tool for the listeners, and something that I think about I hope it's as often as I really intend it to be. Is there's something I learned in my conversational intelligence, and I do this in my coaching with a lot of my coaching clients and with my team at the salon, is there's 3 levels of conversations, and words were designed to move us to different regions of the mind. And so when we think of level 1 conversation, it's transactional, it's tell and ask. And a lot of times we get stuck in a pattern where it makes these different levels of conversation unhealthy. So pattern, or level 1, is tell and ask, but the pattern that most people get stuck in here is tell. So they're constantly telling things. I think in the salon world, a lot of times we have this intention to make sure our guests are using what we recommend at home. We're giving them this information for them to recreate their looks. And then they don't ever take it home. So they're just like, I don't get it. I'm like educating, and I'm like, well, help me understand what it is that you're doing in that part of your guest experience when you're educating. Well, I'm telling them they need this. I'm telling them they need this. I'm telling them that this product is it. And there's just so much telling, but there's very little asking. And so we're able to catch a pattern there. But then we could take it into level 2, which is advocate and inquire. So this is where it's a much more positional. Like, you do have something that you want to advocate about. Like, so if it is a product, you want to get someone really excited about it. And for a lot of people, this is a pattern that I have to work really hard at breaking through, because I get excited about a lot of things, is we just advocate and advocate, like, this is going to be amazing. You're going to love this. This product's going to change your life. And we just stay in that pattern. But again, we're not pulling from the other person by inquiring. I'm excited about this product. I believe it will work. However, how are you feeling about what I'm sharing with you right now? And that's the part that we usually leave out of the pattern, is that inquiry where the person we're sharing with has the opportunity to actually weigh in on the conversation and share the space with us. There is this third level, though, that it's just the best feel good place we can be in a conversation. And that's in share and discover. So this is when we get in a conversation where we're asking questions that we don't know the answer to. And we're starting to engage in different regions of the mind that's going to cultivate stronger connection and trust. So when we enter into a conversational space like this, we come in with asking a discovery question. So if this is with take home, we can come into the guest experience and we can ask this guest, could you share with me what you experience at home when you're doing your hair? What do you experience that feels really good? And what do you experience at home that doesn't feel good when you're styling your hair? So I'm going into pure discovery here. I don't have an agenda. I'm not hoping to advocate anything. I just want to hear what's happening for that person, find the connection, and then start our share and discover. So once I hear what the challenge is and what they love, then I'm even able to ask, I love knowing more about your hair. Can you tell me more about how you're styling at home? How much time do you have? Instead of just like bombarding them with all this tell, sell, yell information or advocate, we start to build this more trusting relationship. And this has been such a game changer in the way I show up in my coaching and my conversations. So much, I have to share this. I did create a discovery deck that has 55 discovery questions that,
Oh, nice.
yeah, it's so cool. You can just draw from the card and you can use it in many ways. I've used it in a consultation with a team member and a guest, and it was so fun. And just a way to just start to practice how to open up conversations with discovery and just having an experience, even though it maybe isn't the question, eventually in the future you'll be using, but having a tool like this, if you haven't been practicing your curiosity, it's just like a muscle. It starts to develop in you when you start to have an experience where it was like, whoa, I feel more energy leaving a conversation. I feel like I really had a stronger connection. And that guest actually, they did take home what it was that they needed the most. And I know it is what they needed because I really discovered that within this conversation. So there's just a lot of great things that you can do. And this is, again, why I'm so excited about what we're doing and what we're offering, because these are those things that I wish that I would have known earlier in life, because we have more control over the way we make connections than I ever knew. I didn't know we could have conversations like this by just changing our words.
Yeah, I'm so with you, and I think that's why I'm so super pumped about our class too. Besides the fact that I get to hang out with you and actually facilitate a class with you, which is going to be awesome. This is something that was never taught to me. Yeah. Like, this is something that I had to go out and search for and study on my own. And I think about, especially in the hair industry, like especially with hairdressers, because I like that you used the very relatable example of product sales, because that was something that in the beginning I was actually really good at, because I was just cocky enough to just be like, yeah, this is what it is, and this is what you need. And, I just like put it in their hand, and there was pretty much like no choice. Like, I was just basically making people buy stuff. And then as I switched to maybe a bit more kind approach in my life and not so bossy. Yes, I used to have a nickname called Demandy because I was very demanding. And as I started to adapt my my conversational intelligence to being more kind and more open, what I noticed is my retail scores started to go down a little bit because I wasn't being so forceful. Mm. And what I was trying to do was just over teach almost, to your point. Like, I was like, I don't understand. Like, I'm so good about like telling them everything about the product and telling them why it's so good for their hair. And that is the typical thing we are taught, even when we go to product knowledge classes, is you need to teach them better.
Yes.
Which I do agree with, but that's just one piece of the puzzle. As I started to learn about communication and exactly what you talked about, especially when I was trying on to CIQ, conversational intelligence, for the first time, when I saw this chart of the level 3 conversation, and I went back to my coach training, which is, look, ask better questions and create a relationship. All of a sudden, things started to shift again. And it didn't feel like sales even.
No.
Like I didn't worry about selling products anymore. I was concerned with creating a relationship with people and helping or asking the right questions that would give me the information to actually help them.
Yes.
Based on what they really need versus what I was looking at from the outside and deciding what I thought they need.
Yes. It is literally a game changer when you just even, for your viewers today, you can just try one thing. If you take one thing away from what we're sharing around, asking a discovery question, a question that you may at first, I'm going to be honest, it may feel really uncomfortable to ask a question you've never asked. Because again, the way we ask questions is also pattern. So you think about even in your consultations, how many times are you starting them with, what are we doing today? And it's like, we just get in these patterns where it's going to feel really uncomfortable when you start to try to break something that you've always done, because you're doing something that the mind is not familiar with. And the mind takes in information in patterns. It's the way it operates, like you said earlier, without having to use a ton of energy. And so to change a pattern, it's going to feel uncomfortable. And this is just experiment with it. Write down another question that you could take in and experiment in a conversation tomorrow, whether it's a consultation or if it's with a best friend or it's a partner, just somebody, just to see what happens when they also get to experience a question that hasn't been asked to them maybe ever before. And it's
Right.
like, you'll feel what you just talked about, Andrew, where it's like, wow, that just felt different. And it didn't feel like I was trying to sell anything. And it didn't feel like I was trying to overeducate or train them on something. It just felt like I really got the impact that I intended to have. Right. And it's just, I think, again, it's so neat to be able to share this with people, because a lot of us have no idea that there is information that can help us this way. We all have blind spots. There's always reality gaps happening in conversation, the way that we're taking in information and trying to make sense of it, and the movie of our mind and the movie of their mind. And this is the stuff that can really start to help you have just a better feel and greater success in life when you know how to build these type of relationships through the way you communicate. So I love helping people in this way. It's why I wrote my book around communication, why I developed these cards, why I'm doing workshops, is I want to give this information to the world, because when we have better relationships and we're all having better relationships, it really is going to make the world a better place. That may sound crazy, but it's so true. When you can start to even have these difficult conversations where something starts to feel really not good and disconnected, and you can realize without taking it personal, okay, there's a reality gap here. Something is happening that we need to slow down and really understand, instead of just trying to each be heard and then walk away and no one's heard. So there's ways that we can even take timeouts in conversations where it's like, hey, I just want to check in. How are you feeling right now? What's happening for you? And letting them express. And even if they're like, I don't know, I'm just kind of feeling a little upset. All right, is this a time that we could really talk about what's making you the most upset right now? Would it make sense for us to maybe revisit this conversation at another time, and set that time up before you leave, so that you can give each other a mental break, really have that understanding of what's the most important that we work to get towards by having this conversation? What does mutual success look like for you and for me, for us to really come back into this conversational space and have the impact that we both intended? And I wish that would have been something I'd know, is that if things aren't going well, it doesn't mean that they're not going to go well ever. It just means that we are having a reality gap between how they're perceiving whatever's being taken in and what I'm perceiving. And there is a way to close that gap if we know how to use our words to close it.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I feel like when you start talking about communication, very often people kind of like tune out in a way that it's like, well, that's just that communication talk again, and dismiss it. But let's be real. This is the thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you cannot communicate with the world, the relationships are not going to happen. It's just, that is what's real. And if we look at so many challenges that we have within our life, and I look, and by the way, Drea and I are very aware that this is still a process that we are deeply working on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But if we start to step back and really look at so many of the challenges that we face in our life, I think we would really uncover the fact that a good number of them are just about miscommunication. I love what you said there, the reality gap. And the challenge here is, I love that terminology because it really expresses the fact that if you and I are in an argument, what you're saying is not wrong. What you are saying that is different from mine is your personal reality with reason, history, experience behind it. The reason I feel like you are wrong or that, my way is right is the same thing. It's my reality of my history, my upbringing, my experiences. And so if we could really, if we could really look at especially disagreements from that perspective, not from, well, you're wrong and I'm right. If we could step back and go, they have a very different reality around this situation than I do. That all of a sudden diffuses the energy so much. It's not like it's going to take the energy away, right? Like that's one thing we talk about in our workshops is it's not like there's not going to be emotional energy there. It is going to be there. And we even talk about in our workshops how to work with that energy. But what it does do is it takes it from the energy being way up here, where it's like we're butting heads, we're in a fight, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, there's still some tension there, but we can stay here with each other. We don't need to just fight or run at this point.
Yeah.
So I really hope for those of you that are watching that, and I imagine that if you are watching this, you are probably pretty tuned into this because you're still here.
Yes.
You're probably the kind of person that does actually want to communicate better, does want to have these experiences. So, but I really do hope that through what we're sharing and through the work that we do, that more people do tune into the fact that the skill set, which is another thing that you said that I think is just really important to emphasize, the skill set of communication is life-changing. It is business-changing.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to all the haircutting classes on the planet, but if you cannot communicate with that guest in your chair, it is going to be really challenging to build a business. We've seen it, right, Drea? We've both been salon. Well, I was a salon owner. You are a very successful salon owner. The people in our salons that have the gift of great communication, that gift to create relationship, they could honestly do terrible hair and they will still have a great clientele.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, even working with one of my younger team members today, one of the things is inside the salon, she feels like an extrovert. Outside of the salon, she feels like an introvert. And this is a beautiful individual that has these big goals and aspirations, and they're very clear for her. Sometimes that can be a little challenging for people to get clear on what their biggest dreams are. For her, she's a dreamer. And she's also somebody that's recognizing that being out of the salon, she gets really nervous and she closes down. And she said to me today, she said, I know I need to learn how to become better at building relationships outside of the salon for me to get where I want to go in this industry. And it was so amazing to see her awareness there and knowing I could help her and being able to really let her have more hope, knowing there is a skill set here that we're going to develop together to help understand what it is that's making it so scary for you. What is your approach? giving her tools on how she can start to prime conversational spaces, how she can enter into a new interaction dynamic with someone she's never met, even just the nonverbal cues that can help start to create safety for both her and the other person. I mean, there's so much here that can be learned and practiced and embodied that can make someone that feels like they're an introvert and they could never, be someone that could be, I don't know. I want to say like just bigger and seen outside of their, comfort zone. There's a way to break through even that belief system when you learn about what you and I share with others. And that I love because that's changing lives. That's somebody that maybe felt defeated because they've been told they were an introvert and then learn this skill set and the tools that we have to give them to start to have a new story. They flip the script in their mind and a new belief system that they can and will start to make great relationships no matter what they've been labeled. And that's just like, that's why I do this, and I've seen it time and time again, being a coach now for almost 15 years and a salon owner for almost 15 years. It's like, you start to see my beginning years when I didn't have this and I almost felt hopeless for them, to where it's like that hasn't entered into my way of being with an individual since I've learned and embodied this way of communicating. I know that as long as they believe it's possible, we can flip that script. And that's what's so cool about this work, Andrew.
Yeah. And one of the things that I so appreciate about you, Drea, is because I've been your friend and I have stood next to you for so many years now, you are the living proof of this. Like, you have invested so much into yourself as far as how you communicate and how you share yourself with the world. And the one thing, y'all, if you ever get a chance to spend time with Drea, which if you come to our Boise retreat, of course, you're going to get to spend some time with her, you will find that this person holds so much hope for other individuals and so much hope for just the world in general that it's absolutely infectious. And I think we all need friends like Drea and supports like Drea, where it's like, on those days that, I'll tell you honestly, like on the days that I'm kind of down, who do you think I call? Oh, what's wrong way? It's her. I call Drea because she's that light that I sometimes need to say, like, hey, yeah, everything's going to be all right. Like, we're going to get through this. And, things are going to, you have the potential and you have the ability. So just know, too, that, if you do come and join us in Boise, it's July 16th and 17th. Is that right? Or 17th and 18th?
No, 16th and 17th.
Okay, 16th and 17th. It's not just a class. Yeah. This is actually an experience. This is going to be about spending time with 30 other people doing the same type of work with you. And it's going to be hands-on. Like, we're going to do this work together with people like Drea and I that can create a safe space that you can actually get a bit more vulnerable and say, oh, okay, here are my patterns. And this is why I'm not getting what I want from my communication. But you get to do it in a safe space where it's like, okay, great, awareness. Now what do we do with it? How do we establish new skill sets and new patterns and new ways of communicating and being that are supportive and do get us closer to what I want? And we're going to have amazing experiences throughout the weekend. We're going to have beautiful and creative, healthy food throughout the weekend. This, like I said, this isn't just going to be a class. This is a 2-day hands-on experience that I really don't say this kind of stuff lightly. And I think if you watch this enough, you know this is going to change lives. This is going to make a difference in people's lives.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that, because it is the truth. And having 2 days where you get to immerse yourself in this is much different than even doing an online course or, doing a training where you're just going back once a month. It's, you are immersing yourself in new ways of thinking and being, and in a safe environment. It's transformational. It will change your life. And this has been one of my biggest aspirations, is to hold a space like this for individuals to come in and really have an experience around how they show up, and starting to even imagine the ways that they want to start to have the changes to show up differently. And to do it in a place where we get to really come together for this many hours. And to, like you said, it's not a training. It's not like you're just going to be talked at. Like, you get to experience this information, and it is life changing. And it's going to be a small, intimate group as well, which I think is also very special. So I can't wait. I mean, it's a dream to get to do this work with you, Andrew. You're, one of my dearest friends and mentors, and what you do and how you're creating this beautiful change in the world and information that you bring to people that is changing their lives. I look up to you, and I just love you. And I'm grateful for this show and you inviting me to be your guest. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. And the Sambia team has popped into the chats the link for the Alchemy of Communication event that is in Boise, Idaho, July 16th and 17th. We do have payment plans. That's only going to stay available for the rest of this week, the payment plan option. But we'll keep the early bird special open for a little bit longer, especially since we're just getting to connect with some of you right now. But we'll keep the early bird special, which is $200 off the total price. We'll keep that open for a little bit longer. And if you do have any questions, please just reach out to Drea and myself, and we'll be happy to answer them. And Drea, thank you so very much for spending time with us tonight, because even if you don't come to the class, I think that you probably walked away from tonight's discussion with Drea with some things that you can actually put into place and start to practice for yourself. So Drea, thank you so much for sharing that awesome gift with us.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. And yes, please reach out if you have any questions. I am active on my social media, and my website is dreahammer.com. And you can look for my discovery deck if you're wanting more tools on curiosity. My book is available on Amazon, and that has a lot of the information that we've talked about today. There's parts of that in the book as well, and that's Intelligent Huddles. And I love to be a resource for people, so I would love to hear from you. And for those that make it to the workshop, it's going to be powerful. So thank you so much, Andrew.
Absolutely. Have a great rest of your evening. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight, because as you can tell, this is something that Drea and I are both very passionate about, is talking about communication. And honestly, even if you don't have the ability to come and join us in Boise, please just connect with us through social, because Drea and I both post a lot about this type of content. And if you have specific questions, she and I will both be very happy to offer what we can to support you. So please don't feel hesitant to reach out to us at any point. And thank you to the Sambia team. Thank you, Sammy, for always allowing us to have this platform. And if you are a big Sambia fan that loves the tools, don't forget that you can actually become a Sambia affiliate, which gives you a code that you can offer to your friends. You get a 20% commission when people use your code, and they get an additional 10% discount, even on top of already discounted items. So that's very cool. And if you do want to bring the Sambia team into your salon for hands-on education, you can head to sambia.com/education for more information on how you bring the team in and get hands-on. So thank you all so very much for joining us tonight. We hope you enjoyed it. Take care.